The Houston Texans just sent a warning shot through the entire AFC, and it came in the form of a wild, nerve-wracking win over Josh Allen in front of the whole country. A game that finished 23-19 looked simple on the scoreboard, but nothing about it was calm. One moment the Texans were in control, the next, a 4th and 27 hook and ladder had every fan holding their breath. Yet when it mattered most, Houston's defense closed the door, the crowd exploded, and a lot of people watching at home suddenly realized this team is not just trying to survive the season, they are trying to crash the playoff party. What nobody is talking about enough is how they did it. This was not some lucky bounce or fluke night. The Texans' defense put Josh Allen in a cage with 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, and constant pressure that never let him settle. Short fields created chance after chance, the battle-red energy was real, and even with a backup at quarterback, the team never blinked. Davis Mills did not post crazy numbers, but he protected the ball, hit key throws, and trusted the run game and defense to drag this across the finish line. On the sideline, DeMeco Ryans looked like a coach who knew exactly what kind of identity he has built, and exactly how dangerous it can be in a high-pressure game. But here is the twist that makes this story different from a normal upset and turns it into a real AFC problem. This version of the Houston Texans, the one that just outfought Josh Allen in primetime with Davis Mills under center, is not even the final form. A few weeks ago, this same team was sitting in a dark place, starting the year with 3 straight crushing losses and getting written off by almost everyone. The only way to understand how they became this confident and this tough is to go back to that ugly start and see how belief slowly came back to life. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Texans and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 300 likes on this video. The season did not start with celebration for the Houston Texans. It started with a gut punch 3 times in a row. 3 straight losses, all tight, all decided in the final minutes, turned every game into a painful replay of the same feeling. Drives would reach the edge of field goal range and stall, defensive stands would almost hold before slipping at the end, and the scoreboard kept telling them the same thing. Around the league, people shook their heads and moved on, calling it another Houston rebuild year and quietly crossing them out of the AFC playoff picture before the leaves even changed. Inside the building, the story looked very different. Those early games were not blowouts, they were coin flips that kept landing the wrong way. And the film showed that the Texans were a few clean plays away from a very different record. You could already see the poise of CJ Stroud, the toughness of Davis Mills when he had to step in, and a defense that played fast even when the results were ugly. Veterans reminded the locker room that close losses mean you are not far off, and younger players started talking less about what went wrong and more about how to finish. The mood at NRG shifted from anger to stubborn pride, as fans realized this team was not quitting on any snap. Then the wins started to come, and each one felt like breaking a curse. A strong running day here, a late defensive stand there, a fourth-quarter throw from CJ Stroud that cut through pressure and doubt at the same time, and suddenly that 0-3 start became part of the story, not the end of it. The Texans stopped looking like a team trying to avoid embarrassment and started looking like a group that expected to be in every game, no matter the opponent. That is the real reason their latest primetime win hits so hard across the AFC, because everyone can see how far they climbed already. And the scary part is, this climb only makes sense when you look at what their franchise quarterback truly brings to the field. The Houston Texans look like one team when CJ Stroud is on the sideline and a completely different team when he is in the huddle. With him on the field, every snap feels controlled instead of chaotic. He sees the whole picture, moves safeties with his eyes, and throws on time into tight spaces that most quarterbacks will not even try. It is not just the big highlight throws. It is the simple decisions on second and medium, the check down instead of the risky hero ball, the calm footwork when the pocket starts to close. That calm spreads through the offense. Linemen block with more confidence, receivers finish routes knowing the ball can arrive at any moment, and drives feel like they have a real plan instead of hope. What makes CJ Stroud so dangerous is how quickly he has built real trust with his playmakers. Nico Collins knows that if he gets even a step of separation on the outside, the ball will be placed on his hands, not just in his area. Dalton Schultz can sit in a soft spot over the middle and expect a strike before the linebacker can react. When protection breaks, CJ Stroud does not panic. He slides in the pocket, buys a little space, and either hits a late throw or takes what the defense gives him with his legs. Defensive coordinators hate that combination. If they sit back, he will pick them apart with rhythm throws. If they bring pressure, he punishes single coverage and turns broken plays into first downs. That is the kind of quarterback who lifts an entire unit to playoff level. The problem for the rest of the AFC is that this same quarterback has already had to watch from the sideline while dealing with a concussion, and the Texans had to prove they could still win without him. DeMeco Ryans and his staff chose to protect their long-term leader, even in games that felt like must-win battles, and Davis Mills stepped in to keep the season alive. Now Houston stands at a crossroads. They know how high the ceiling is with CJ Stroud, and they have seen that the team can still grind out wins with the backup. The real question becomes how far you push your star in the short term, and how much you lean on the veteran behind him to carry the load while you protect the future. The Houston Texans are stuck in the kind of choice that feels like a football version of that trolley story people argue about in philosophy class. On one track, you have the safe path of keeping CJ Stroud wrapped in bubble wrap until every doctor is completely satisfied. On the other track, you have a season that is very much alive, a locker room that believes, and national games that can swing the entire AFC picture. Every time DeMeco Ryans fills out the quarterback line on the call sheet, he is not just picking a starter, he is deciding how much risk the franchise is willing to take for a shot at January football right now. Into that pressure steps Davis Mills, the calm face in the middle of this storm. He was drafted, benched, pushed down the depth chart, and yet never checked out. He kept learning new systems, kept throwing on side fields, kept watching tape like his chance would come again, even when it looked unlikely. Now those quiet hours matter. Teammates see a quarterback who does not sulk about being behind CJ Stroud, but walks into the huddle ready when his name is called. Coaches see someone who can run the full playbook, adjust protections, and accept that sometimes his job is not to be a star, but to be the steady hand that keeps the train on the tracks while the franchise quarterback heals. The real tension for Houston is what that balance looks like in practice. Do you lean on Davis Mills in the short weeks and heavy hits, trusting the defense and asking the offense to play a different style? Or do you rush CJ Stroud back the moment he is cleared and live with every hit he takes in the pocket? The staff has already shown they are willing to protect their future even if it means more stress in the standings, which means every game plan now has to squeeze even more out of the parts around the quarterbacks. If the Texans are going to walk this line and still chase the playoffs, they need one thing to flip from inconsistent to reliable, and that is the ground attack that completely changes who they are when it finally starts rolling. The Houston Texans turn into a completely different problem for defenses the moment their ground attack actually wakes up. When they finish a game with more than 100 rushing yards, the scoreboard suddenly jumps, drives feel smoother, and third downs look shorter and easier. When the run is stuck in the mud, this same offense can grind to a halt and scrape together something around 16 points. That is not a small gap. That is a full identity change in one stat. The twist is simple and scary for the rest of the AFC. If Houston finds that version of the run game more often, the passing game with CJ Stroud or Davis Mills on the field becomes far harder to predict and far tougher to stop. On nights when it clicks, you can see why the staff keeps chasing it. Woody Marks hits the hole with real burst, falls forward through contact, and forces linebackers to step up instead of sitting back in comfort. When the interior of the line with Ariante, Ursery, Titus Howard, Jake Andrews, and Ed Ingram starts moving people, those simple runs on first down turn into second and short, and the whole playbook opens. Add in the size and power of Trent Brown on the edge, and you suddenly have clear lanes to the right side that wear down a front over 4 quarters. Opponents like Buffalo, who have given up big rushing numbers all season without Ed Oliver, are exactly the kind of matchup where Houston can punch first on the ground and control the rhythm from start to finish. What nobody enjoys on the other sideline is what that style does to the rest of the game. Long, patient drives keep Josh Allen and other star quarterbacks sitting on the bench watching, while the Texans' defense catches its breath and reloads for the next series. Every time Woody Marks falls forward on second down, it is one more snap the pass rush can play with fresh legs, and one less chance for a deep shot against the secondary. That is where this gets dangerous. A reliable run game does not just help the offense, it powers up a defense that already flies around and hunts, and that is exactly where the story goes next. The Houston Texans built a front that makes even superstar quarterbacks feel trapped in slow motion. Snap after snap, Will Anderson Jr. explodes upfield, Danielle Hunter collapses the opposite edge, and the pocket starts to fold in like wet paper. Inside, Sheldon Rankins, Tommy Togiai, Tim Settle, and Mario Edwards do the dirty work, squeezing running lanes and pushing the line of scrimmage back into the passer's lap. Offenses come in with long call sheets and big plans, but after a few series of constant hits and hurry throws, the playbook starts to shrink, and the ball has to come out faster than the receivers can get deep. That is when mistakes show up, and this defense takes full control. Behind that line, the second level cleans up everything that leaks through. Henry To'o reads run keys fast and attacks downhill, meeting backs in the hole instead of waiting 5 yards downfield. Aziz Al-Sher and EJ Speed chase sideline to sideline, closing screens, spying, scrambling quarterbacks, and turning what look like easy checkdowns into hard contact. On early downs, they crowd the box and dare teams to test their toughness. On passing downs, they show pressure, then bail into smart zones that steal the first read. It is never just about one star flying around. It is about 11 players whose jobs all connect, so that every short gain feels earned and every mistake feels costly. The last piece of the puzzle is a secondary that refuses to give up free explosives. Derek Stingley Jr. challenges top receivers on the outside, Kamari Lassiter mirrors the other boundary, and Miles Bryant battles inside where quick routes usually live. When Jalen Pitre is healthy over the top, he helps erase deep shots and jumps passing lanes when quarterbacks get greedy. Houston mixes cover 3, cover 4, and split safety looks that take away the easy bomb and force opponents to live in tight windows over the middle. That is frustrating for any passer, but it becomes a real problem when the schedule lines up names like Josh Allen, a fired-up Indianapolis attack, and a Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City team with playoff spots on the line, which is exactly the kind of gauntlet this group is walking into next. The Houston Texans are not easing into the playoff race. They are diving straight into the deep end of the AFC. Every game from this point looks like a test written for grown teams, not pretenders. On one side of the standings line, you see wildcard spots and division titles still within reach. On the other side, you see a crowded pack of teams waiting for Houston to slip. The Bills fighting for seed, the Colts pushing from inside the division, the Chiefs chasing prime position. All of them sit in the same lane the Texans are trying to claim. One result swings tiebreakers, another flips who holds the last ticket into January, and there is no space for a slow week. The road ahead is where we really see what this team is made of. A trip to face Indianapolis is not just another game. It is a direct hit to the division race and to head-to-head rules that can decide everything later. Then comes a primetime showdown with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, the kind of night where the whole league watches to see if CJ Stroud can trade answers with a champion while the defense tries to squeeze another star. Around those headline matchups, games against teams like the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders are landmines because one lazy Sunday can undo weeks of hard work. The Texans have to treat all of it like a single climb, not a mix of big games and easy ones, because the standings do not care which opponent gives you the loss. The crazy part is that this stretch might be the best thing that ever happens to this group. By the time the regular season ends, DeMeco Ryans could have a roster that has basically lived in playoff mode for a month straight, with CJ Stroud and Davis Mills both tested in real pressure and a defense used to facing names like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes with everything on the line. If they survive this schedule and sneak or storm into the bracket, they will not feel like a friendly underdog that is just happy to be there. They will feel like a battle-ready problem. That is when the real fear starts for the rest of the AFC. Because a team that has been sharpened like this walking into your stadium in January is not something any contender actually wants to see. The Houston Texans look like the kind of wild card that keeps established contenders awake at night. They have a young star in CJ Stroud who already plays with veteran calm, a veteran backup in Davis Mills who can step in without panic, and a defense that has proved it can squeeze the life out of elite offenses when the lights are bright. This is not an old group running out of time or a soft story that'll be happy just to sneak into the bracket. It is a hungry roster that had to claw back from the bottom of the standings, clean up real problems, and earn respect in front of the entire league. When a team comes through that kind of grind and is still standing, they do not walk into January feeling scared of anyone. What really makes them dangerous is how complete their playoff formula looks when you put everything together. They have a passing attack that can be sharp and aggressive with CJ Stroud, but can also shift into a safer, control style if Davis Mills is in, and both versions are supported by a run game that can flip a matchup the moment it crosses that 100-yard mark. On the other side of the ball, the front with Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, Sheldon Rankins, and Tommy Togiai can wreck a game plan before it even starts, while Derek Stingley Jr., Kamari Lassiter, Miles Bryant, and Jalen Pitre make sure nothing deep comes easy. That mix travels well. Cold weather, loud stadium, hostile crowd, it does not matter. A team that runs the ball, hits the quarterback, and has a poised passer who does not force panic throws is built for tight playoff nights. The scary part for the rest of the AFC is that Houston is still growing into that identity. DeMeco Ryans has only begun to shape the culture. CJ Stroud is still adding chapters, and young pieces on defense are learning how to close out big games, not just compete in them. If this group manages to fight through the remaining schedule and land any seed at all, they will arrive already used to pressure, already used to facing stars, and already used to hearing that they were not supposed to be there. That is a dangerous mindset. You are talking about a team that has nothing to fear, nothing to protect except its rising future, and every reason to walk into Buffalo, Indianapolis, or Kansas City believing they can end someone else's season in one ruthless night.